Yup. It's time to sew. Hey friends, welcome back to my sewing room. My name is Becca, and in today's video we are going to go through a tutorial where we make block 1 for the Bright Side Sew Along. If you don't know what this is, it's basically a block of the month program that starts in March and ends in April, and it's hosted by Fat Quarter Shop. If you get the Sew Sampler box every month, you already get the pattern for each block. You get 12 blocks and then the finishing pattern at the end. And if you are not a Sew Sampler member, you can still do this quilt along either using the quilt kit from Fat Quarter Shop, which is what I'm doing, or sewing from your stash. You just need to buy the pattern each month on their website for $4.95. In today's video, I have got my block 1 instruction card, and I'm going to go through and make this lovely block. But because it would not be fair for me to share all of the cutting and sizing information from you, I am picking up in this pattern after I have pressed, cut, and labeled each one of my fabrics. So we're going to take a look down here, and I'm going to show you exactly how I put this block together step by step. Here are all of my fabrics already labeled. I've got A, B, C, D, and E, and that's all I need to get started. The first thing that I'm going to do is take my A fabric and my D fabric. There are 2 squares for each of those, and turn those into 4 half square triangle units. And this is how I do that. First, I'm going to move these off to the side. I'm going to pull these pins out so that I can work with the fabrics. By the way, aren't these super cool? They're little letters and numbers that are made out of plastic, and they have a little kind of hole at the top so you can pin them into your fabrics. I can't remember what they're called, but they are made by Purple Hobbies, and Stephanie from Stephanie Stitches usually carries them in her shop. I'll put a link to her Etsy shop in the first comment down below this video. The first thing I'm going to do is take my background fabric because it's white and it's a little bit lighter, so my markings will show up, and I'm going to draw a line on the wrong side, meaning not the pretty side, on the back of each of those squares from corner to corner. And I'm just going to use a ruler or some other straight edge, either one is fine, and I'm just going to line it up so that when I grab my marking pen, which I am using a water-soluble marker, I go directly corner to corner. There's 1. And 2. Now I'm going to make my pairs so that I can go to the sewing machine. I'm going to take one of the background squares and one of the print squares, and I'm going to place them pretty sides together. So wrong side, wrong side. I'm going to leave it so that the background square with my mark is up. And I'm going to sew just less than a 1/4 inch on either side of this drawn line. If you're a beginner, I'm going to tell you right now that it's more important that your seam allowance is consistent than exactly precise. However, when you're doing a block of the month or a sew along or another pattern, if you're following a pattern's cutting instructions, you probably do need to get your 1/4 inch down. Don't worry, I have a great video that'll help you do that, and it'll be linked right at the top of here. If you need to, go watch that, get it down, and then come back. I'll be waiting for you. All right, so I'm going to go to my machine, and I'm going to sew what I call a scant 1/4 inch on either side of this line and on either side of this line, and I'll meet you right back here. That's 1. And that's 2. Then I'm going to take a cutting utensil, either a pair of scissors or a rotary cutter, and I'm going to cut those triangle pairs apart so that when I'm done cutting, I should have 4 triangle pairs. Each one will have a triangle of background and a triangle of my print. The pressing instructions want us to press these half square triangles to fabric D, which is our print. And so to do that, I'm going to lay my triangle pairs down so that fabric D is on top because that's where I want to press to. And then I'm just going to put my fingers in between those two layers, and I'm going to gently nudge that fabric D over into the side, and that means that the seam is going to be under fabric D and not under fabric A. And I'm going to gently press down with my fingers to kind of set that in place. I know that's not super flat right now. That's okay. I'm just nudging the fabric into the position I want it to be in and making sure that my seam is nice and straight and the fabric is thinking about cooperating with me. And then once I've done this, I'm going to come back with a hot iron and I'm really going to convince that seam to stay right where I just put it with my fingers. You do want to be careful whenever you do this because you don't want to stretch or warp your fabric in any way. And so it's really just a firm but light touch. Does that make sense? Firm but light. Tough yet gentle. You get what I mean. Just be careful. Here's my hot iron and I'm just going to set it on each one of those seams and I'm going to let it sit there. I'm not going to move it around because I don't want to warp my seam. I'm just going to set it right on top. This is what we call pressing in the quilting world. This is different than ironing. If you are careful, you can iron your block. Ironing is when you're moving the iron around. Pressing is when you're just setting the iron on the seam and leaving it. Karen Brown from Just Get It Done Quilts has an amazing video on ironing / pressing tips and techniques, and I'll link that video right up here. So if you want to see it, you hop over there and check it out. Now I have 4 half square triangle units that are nice and flat, and they're called half square triangle units because it's a square that's made up of 2 equal triangles. How cool! Now I'm going to take these units and trim them down according to what the pattern says, but I don't want to tell you what I'm trimming them down to because that would be giving away part of the pattern. So instead of telling you what to trim them down to, refer to your pattern instructions, but I will show you how I square up my half square triangle units. There are lots of ways to trim up a half square triangle unit. This is just one of them, probably the most time consuming, but it is a tried and true method. So to square up my half square triangle unit, I like to use a square ruler because it has a line that goes corner to corner, and that makes my life a whole lot easier. What I'm going to do is position my ruler on my half square triangle unit, and I'm going to make sure that this 45-degree line is on that seam all the way through. Now, if your seam is a little bit wonky, if you weren't perfectly straight, it is more important to have that 45-degree line on the seam at each of the corners and let the middle be a little wonky if you have to. That's going to be hidden a whole lot easier in your quilt than the corners will be. The corners, having those 2 fabrics meet up in both corners, that's what's going to help make sure that you have those really pretty points. The next thing I'm going to do is make sure that I have fabric extending past what the size of my block is going to be, both on the left and the bottom, while still maintaining that line on my seam. And then I have some fabric extending off the top and the right to cut off. I'm going to take my rotary cutter and I'm just going to slice. I do have a rotating mat so that I can make this a little bit easier, and slice, and then I'm going to try to pull those away. I want to make sure that my fabric comes off cleanly, because if it doesn't, my hand is still on the ruler, it's still in place, and I have a chance to go back and clean that up without having to readjust my ruler. Once those sides are done, I'm going to pick up my ruler, turn this around, and then line up those freshly cut edges so that they are exactly on the mark that I am trying to square this half square triangle up to. And then I'm going to clean up the right side and along the top. And you're going to do that to all 4 of your units. Now we're going to take our fabric B and our fabric E, and we're just going to sew them together right along this edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to take these 4 units and press them towards my background, and I'm just doing the same thing that I did before. I'm putting my fabric for my background on top, and I'm putting my fingers in between the 2 layers and gently nudging that over to the other side. And then I'm going to take a hot iron and set it on each of those seams. Nice and flat. You're also going to want to trim these 4 up according to what the pattern says. I know it seems like a lot of work to press and trim after each step, but those 2 things will help make sure that your quilt blocks look amazing. Press and then trim, always. We are almost done. This block is going together super fast. All we have to do is lay out our fabric to make our block and sew it all together. So we're going to sew this kind of like a 9-patch, but not all of the pieces are created equal. We want to take one of our half square triangle units and put it in the upper left corner so that fabric D is pointing up and to the right. And then we're going to take one of our rail fence pieces and we're going to set it right next to that block so that fabric E is at the bottom and your background fabric is at the top. Then we're going to take another half square triangle unit and lay it down next to that so that fabric D is pointing down and to the right. Another rail fence, same orientation, fabric E towards the middle, background out on the side. Another half square triangle unit. This one is going to take our fabric D and point down into the left. Another rail fence with our fabric E touching the middle and the background out along the sides. And our last half square triangle unit is going to be put in here with fabric D pointing up and to the left. And our last rail fence is going to go right in the space just like this. And now we have a little hole in the middle, and guess what goes there? Fabric C. Just going to place that little guy right just like that. This is what our block looks like. Isn't it so pretty? I absolutely love it. It's going together super fast. So I'm going to take this to the machine. I'm going to sew this row, this row, this row, and then I'm going to put all those rows together. Now, after I sew each row, the pattern does tell me for this and this row, it wants me to press the seams out, and for the middle row, it wants me to press the seams in. I don't know that I would normally do that because of the half square triangle units being in the corner. I probably would have done opposite of that because that's going to give me, on the back side of my fabric, I'm going to see a little X where the threads line up that will indicate where my point is for each of these half square triangle units. And if I sew just to the right of that X where the thread is, X marks the spot, right? If I sew just to the right of that, then I'm not going to lose my point. However, I'm going to trust that Fat Quarter Shop knows what they're talking about, and they're thinking about the overall quilt and how things are going to go together. So while I might be making my life a little bit easier right now, this block and how it actually sits into the quilt top might need those seams to go in the way they're telling me to put them. So I'm going to follow the instructions and cross my fingers that I don't lose my points. We'll find out. The last row's on. Let's take a look. Those points are pretty good. So these two are pretty close and these two are just off a hair. I'm going to leave it. It's going to be fine. All right, so the last step is to press our block. And so I've got my iron here, and the pattern actually says to press the seams out and away from the middle. And again, I'm trusting their instructions that these pressing directions are going to be necessary for how this block is going to go in this mystery quilt. Then we're going to flip it over to the front. I'm going to give the front a nice, hot, dry press. When I'm moving the iron around on my block, by the way, I am kind of lifting up. I'm not pushing it. I'm kind of releasing a little bit of the pressure and gliding it to that next spot that I want to press. And then yes, because I love a nice, flat, stiff block, I'm going to mist it with a bit of Mary Ellen's. And I'm going to press it again. Start in the middle, apply lots of pressure. That's usually where the most of your bulk tends to be, is somewhere around the middle of your block. And then I'm just going to start pressing outwards. Although I guess you could start wherever you wanted to. So there you go. There's my finished block. This was super fun to make, super easy to put together, and I had a blast. Thank you so much for sticking with me, watching me put this together, messed up points and all. Hey, finished is better than perfect, right? I look forward to doing block number 2 when my May box comes. So if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. That's going to let you know, number 1, when I get my Sew Sampler box in May, and number 2, you're going to be notified when I post the video assembling block number 2. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, guys. I'll see you all on Friday night. Bye.